Things you can do in 15 minutes. Walk the dog. Make a smoothie. Meditate. Now you can add creating a personalized retirement plan to that list. Schedule your complimentary 15-minute call with Heckman Financial Services today. Text VISIT to 800-454-1184.
Keyword.
That's VISIT to 800-454-1184.
Financial uncertainty has so many of us worried about how to make sure our savings is going to last throughout our retirement. Plus, there's been a major shakeup in the French retirement system. What can we learn from that? We're so glad you joined us today. This is Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. Eric and his team at Heckman Financial, they're located right here in Silicon Valley, and he has been helping people have remarkable retirements for nearly 30 years now. Eric's goal is to help you weather most any economic storm. Here's the number we want you to have handy today, 800-454-1184. You can call for a complimentary appointment or text the word VISIT to 800-454-1184. And we know you have a lot of worries. If you want some confidence with that, get our complimentary toolbox along with Eric's book, Worry Less Wealth. Plus, get other educational materials by just texting the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. And you can always find us online at wealthcreatorradio.com. Eric, so good to be here with you.
Yeah, well, it's been kind of a crazy time with, the Fed, of course, raised rates again. And
not by much, though, right?
Not as much. And now they're saying, well, okay, maybe we'll stop this for a while, and which puts them in a tough spot because they definitely want to get inflation back under control. But at the same time, they also don't want to keep wreaking more havoc, and which we're starting to see filter through the system. Obviously, we saw that with the banks, the run on the bank at Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank and other banks being shaky. This isn't from bad loans. This isn't from failed policies. This is actually from them doing what they're supposed to do, put safe money into treasuries. But since the Fed raised rates so much, those treasuries aren't worth as much. So as long as they don't have to sell them, they can wait to maturity. They don't have a loss. But if too many people take money out of the bank, they have to sell them at a loss, and then that freaks more people out, and that's basically what happened to some of these banks here. So, so it's a little bit different because these are really, really, truly classic run on the banks where people just freak out and then do worse things. So you want to keep your limits under the FDIC limit and such, but you also don't want to do crazy stuff, right? You don't want to overreact and things because there's nothing that bad going on. There's no, we don't have huge collapses and other things like we had in 08, 09.
Right. So I want to talk about this story over in France where government leaders pushed the retirement age back by 2 years, and it has prompted strikes and riots throughout the country. In fact, the garbage collectors went on strike because they didn't like this pension reform. And of course, they didn't pick up trash bins, so it had trash overflowing in all the streets there. But the president and the prime minister say those changes were necessary to keep the country's social security system from going under. So I just wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, just for clarity, they moved it from 62 to 64. It's already 67, in the U.S. is the main one. And, this is them just trying to, somewhat catch up to us and where we've already been. And I think people are living a lot longer. It's amazing how many clients I have now that are retired and their parents are still around. And they're saying they're expecting an inheritance in their 70s.
Oh my! Yeah.
And maybe who knows? Maybe it won't be till their 80s, right? So definitely people are living longer, and so that you do need to make these changes.
Okay, so that is what we're talking about right here in our country, anyway, which is the reason I brought it up. They're thinking about changing our full retirement age to 70, going from 67 to 70. So we probably need to be prepared for more policy changes like France too, right?
Certainly, yeah, because we're all living longer. You need to make sure that money lasts. Literally, when Social Security first started, the reason they picked 65 was statistically when most people had already passed away by then. And it was not supposed to be something that you're going to get for 20, 30 years of payments. And that's what's happening now. And so, that's going to be a lot bigger strain. Of course, you got the baby boomers all retiring right now. And that's a huge block of people going in, and Social Security all depends on how many other people are working. So, if you don't have enough workers behind them to help fund the system, there's going to be issues. And, anytime you go on Social Security's website, they tell you when they when they believe they'll be having issues paying their full benefits, is how they kind of state it. So,
Yeah.
And usually that's right around 2035, which sounds like a long time from now, but that's only 12 years. So yeah, there needs to be something fixed. And, the hard part is, since nobody cares about getting along in Congress and doing positive things and actually doing stuff that we all need to do, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because hopefully it's not something where, it's desperate because it needs to be done right now, today kind of thing. And we can hopefully plan it a little bit more ahead of time. So yeah, it just, again, goes back to why you need to do your own planning, why you need to have an income plan. Here at Heckman Financial, we create that blueprint to worry less wealth. And, that goes over the income plan, where you don't have to only be dependent on Social Security, but you can have other lifetime income sources that you could, create on your own. Other ways to invest, look at the taxes, look at the healthcare legacy issues. And once you have that plan, then you're going to be able to be okay. So that you're going to be able to, retire how you want to retire, and make sure you know when you can retire too. So, that's one of the things that you can get. And also, along with that, in our digital toolbox, we also even have a Social Security decision report where you can read a little bit on these. These reports are 10 to 15 pages, super fast, easy to read. And so, if you want to get all those tools, all these options, and even a copy of my book, and if you wanted to set up a time to talk, again, text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, to get that link to that digital toolbox, 800-454-1184, or request it online at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And again, we thank you so much for joining us. This is Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. He is a certified financial planner here to guide you about retirement planning. So, all right, for people who have worked, like all the baby boomers, and paid into Social Security, for decades, they're going to be entitled to all those benefits they accumulated over the years. What are some ways, though, that you help people make the most out of those benefits that are rightfully theirs?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things is, it really drives me nuts when people look at that calculation and they'll say, hey, if I retire, if I take it at 67, or if I take it at 70, usually around age 80, it's going to be better that I've taken it at 70. Well, when did you retire? Did you retire
late 70?
Well, did you retire at 70, or did you retire like a lot of people at 65?
Okay.
And lots of times the reality is people retired at 65. And so if you had no income from your Social Security for 3 years, what were you doing? You had to spend other assets. And so lots of times when I actually look at the numbers for a lot of people's income plan, because we can look to say, okay, if you take Social Security now or you take Social Security later, how much money do you have at 80? How much money do you have at 90? I'm not talking Social Security benefits. I'm just talking about how much money do you have.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I'm finding for most people's plans, you actually have more money if you take Social Security earlier.
Really?
Not later, earlier. So now we're not talking, before full retirement age. We're talking, usually the 67 to 70 comparison. So it is one of those things that, you may actually get more benefits by having technically a smaller check, because you would have had more checks over those years. So that's, I think, one of the ways that people can get a lot more money out of Social Security. Also, if you're married, then there's a lot of other things that go into calculations there, depending on how different your ages are between you and your spouse, and who's got the higher benefits. And so, there's a lot more into Social Security than what people really think. And, it has to go into your overall plan. It really needs to be part of that entire planning process. So it's not just a decision you make on its own, separate from your investments, separate from your income, because it's all tied in, right? It all goes in the same checking account, right? So
yeah,
it all goes to help pay that mortgage, or pay that cruise ship bill, or pay that fun vacation that you always wanted to take. So again, if that's something you want to get a lot more information on, you can get our Social Security decision report. You can get a copy of our book. You can even set up a 15-minute phone call with us if you want. But all those links and all that great information is sitting there right there in our digital toolbox. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or download it directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
What should you do when your spouse dies? Eric will give you all the details coming up next on Wealth Creator Radio.
If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. There's a particular time of life this phrase couldn't be more appropriate. How can you know you'll live the retirement you've always imagined? After all, life can be so unpredictable. You've worked hard and saved. Watch your accounts go up and down with the market. Your advisor says, don't worry, you'll be fine. But you still don't feel confident. Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial has a checklist to help you find out if you're on the right track for retirement. Take his checklist challenge. If you can check all the boxes with confidence, you may be ready for retirement. If not, Eric can help you address any potential costly mistakes. To get Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial's complimentary checklist, call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. See if you've got it right. Take the checklist challenge today. Call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services offered through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Hi, you're listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer here with Eric, and we have for you a Wealth Creator toolbox that you can get complimentary, which includes his book and a whole bunch of other educational reports that can guide you with retirement. All you have to do is text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, 800-454-1184. Just text that word toolbox. Now, there's no way to truly prepare for something as devastating as the death of a spouse. So it's important to realize that you probably won't be able to make solid financial decisions in your grief. So Eric, I know that unfortunately you have experienced this a lot, not only with your parents, but also with your clients.
Probably one of the examples that comes to mind a lot was this one lady who they had been married, I think 40 something years, a long time. Mm-hmm. And they had some rental property. And they had lots of different assets and such, but her, like most people, unfortunately still, or a lot of people, I should say, wasn't one of the things they wanted to bother with or, look at,
yeah.
was the personal finances. And all of a sudden, not only does she have to figure out her finances, but she also has to run rental property. And her husband was the one who... he was kind of a handyman kind of guy. So he would, in retirement, he'd fix a lot of stuff himself. And she literally told me one time where she got a phone call and the tenant was talking about some problem with the floors. And she just started crying on the phone to the tenant because she didn't know what to do. And so, this is one of these things where they had these rentals since the 70s. This
goodness.
is the fact that they, didn't ever talk about this or do anything about this or prepare for any of this. And I actually got referred to her by a estate planning attorney that she was having to go talk to after he died and stuff. So that's how I met her. And probably the most interesting thing that's kind of always stuck with me is she said how everything was in a fog. And so every time we would talk, she'd say the fog's a little bit less, and then several years later, she came in. She's like, the fog's lifted. And I'm good now and stuff. And we had to do a lot of different changes. I had to help her with a lot of different accounts and consolidate a lot of things. And the other weird part for her was, even though she had a lot of assets, it wasn't until she actually had money coming in the door. So for her, having $1 million, $2 million sitting around didn't feel like any money until it was actual, checks coming into the checking account every month. That's the only thing that she kind of was used to caring about because, she just wanted to see that income coming in. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of those things where, there's, unfortunately, they never talked about it because what to do and stuff. And we were able to find her a realtor who could help her with the tenants and figure out all that stuff. And then we sold those off, and did all this stuff, to increase her income a whole bunch. And now she loves it. Now she's moved into a senior housing facility type place because she just wanted to, independent one where she just has other people to talk to because she had this huge 3,000 square foot house that with nobody else in it anymore. And it just seems silly. So, but now she's doing great. But, again, that's one of those things where people need to really talk about this. But of course, nobody wants to. And then lots of times there's usually always, I would say probably at least 2/3 of the time, there's one spouse that could care less about money. Yeah. And it's like, no, I always insist that at least a couple of our meetings, they come to them because at some point you may very well likely be the one running all this, even though you don't care. You might
Right.
have to care
So
at some point.
true, yeah. In fact, the World Health Organization says women tend to live between 6 and 8 years longer than men on average. I think we all just know that, just on average, when you think about it, just people that you see. And so, most of the time, not every time, not with my mom and dad. My mom went first. Same with you, right? Your mom went first,
Right.
and then our dads. So the wives there did not outlive their husbands. But for others, Eric, how do you help them understand the reality with their financial planning? Like you said, you make them come to a meeting, but what else? Anything else?
Well, the nice thing is with our income planning software, that's part of the blueprint to worry less wealth that we create for people. We can flip to one part of the screen and say, okay, if this person died in 10 years, 15 years, whatever, what does everything look like to the other person? And so, you lose one Social Security check, your tax rates go up. That's one of the most evil things is people don't think about is, your income drops, maybe not in half, but by a third, but your income tax brackets drop by half.
Gosh.
So a lot of times you end up actually in a higher tax bracket after your spouse dies. And so we kind of go over that stuff and we can actually show that and illustrate it. And, but also just making sure that, if you're having some sort of lifetime income, is there joint payouts? Is there, where's this money at? And just really making sure they know those basics and, just kind of keeping them in the loop, even though they may not think it's interesting or think it's too boring. Again, they might be running it. So it doesn't matter what you think about it, because at some point, if you're the one all of a sudden having to sign the checks or just make all those decisions, you need to know something about it. So that's the main way we kind of help people with that part.
Eric, why don't we tell people what they need to do, who they need to notify when or if something does happen to their spouse and they do not have a financial plan or a financial professional helping them?
Well, really, they just need to reach out to somebody. Usually, hopefully you have a trust set up. I mean, even if things are set up and organized, it's still a mess and still a ton of work. If they're not set up, oh my gosh, it could be almost a full-time job.
Gosh.
And so one of the things that we have actually is we do have a survivor's guide that we give to people to help them. And, there's certain things you got to do within 30 days, typically, which would be like, Social Security, if you have a trust or something like that, or having an affidavit of death from the attorney for those types of things. Then you just kind of course, want to find out where all the accounts are and such. But, then there's certain things you want to do at 90 days. There's certain things, you need to do over a year. There's certain things you don't want to do, right? I mean, there's a lot of things like, don't decide where you're going to live. If you're selling the house or selling this or that, until you have some time, because, those rash decisions could have a lot of side effects, tax-wise and just lifestyle-wise too, because, if all of a sudden you say, oh, okay, might as well sell the house and move out of here. Well, that's also where your friends live, right?
Yeah.
So, your support group you may just ditch your support group right when you need them the most. And so there's a lot of things that you don't want to overreact to. But we do have some resources. I don't have the checklist up there, but that's something people could also, ask us for. But we have a lot of tools up in our toolbox. And that's one of the things that you can request. All you have to do is text the word toolbox, or you can call and leave a message and request the toolbox. That's at 800-454-1184. Again, you can text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or you can download all the resources there at wealthcreatorradio.com.
That's wealthcreatorradio.com. We just thank you so much for joining us today. Eric, are there any other first steps that we need to make if something happens to our spouse?
Well, there's a couple things like death certificates. Usually you want 5 or 10 of those. Seems like a lot, but a bunch of places want those.
You need them. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, if you haven't set up funeral stuff, you have to go through all that stuff about, cremation or burial, all those fun, awful decisions, right?
Right.
But like I said, slow down a lot of other things. Don't make a lot of rash choices. There is some stuff that you want to do is you want to look at, keep the brokerage statement for that month, because there's a difference in value. You get a step up in value at somebody's death. If you're going to keep that real estate for a long time, at some point you want to get an appraisal on the house and other things. So, again, there's stuff you want to do. I think it's probably one of the most critical times to really have some sort of advisor to talk to and, find out all those questions, because obviously it's a super stressful time. There's a lot of things going on. And, really what you have to do is say, okay, well, how's my income changing? I'm about to lose one Social Security check. Do I have any other income changes that's going to happen? What do I need to do with IRAs and such like that? Because those you have to roll over to your name and decide how to handle those. And what's going to be your spending level going forward. A lot of things don't change. Your property tax doesn't get cheaper. Your Wi-Fi bill doesn't get cheaper. There's a lot of things that after somebody passes away, it's not everything's cut in half. It may be cut in 20%, 30% cheaper, but not compared to how much your income may have just dropped and your taxes just went up. So, but there's also a lot of great things you could do last minute tax planning in that year where you're still legally married, because the year of death, you're still able to qualify as filing married. The next year you file single and your rates go up. So there may be some stuff like Roth conversions, other things that you'd want to take action on right away. So again, I think it's really a great time to reach out and get some resources and talk to somebody. So, if you want to, again, get that toolbox, get some information there. And then if you want to reach out, or if you have somebody in that situation, definitely have them get a hold of us and we can help them a lot. Again, you can either text the word toolbox or just call and request it at 800-454-1184. Again, that's toolbox, 800-454-1184, or request it directly online at wealthcreatorradio.com.
What happens with your taxes and Social Security when your spouse dies? Eric will walk you through those changes when Wealth Creator Radio returns.
If something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. There's a particular time of life this phrase couldn't be more appropriate. How can you know you'll live the retirement you've always imagined? After all, life can be so unpredictable. You've worked hard and saved. Watch your accounts go up and down with the market. Your advisor says, don't worry, you'll be fine. But you still don't feel confident. Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial has a checklist to help you find out if you're on the right track for retirement. Take his checklist challenge. If you can check all the boxes with confidence, you may be ready for retirement. If not, Eric can help you address any potential costly mistakes. To get Eric Heckman at Heckman Financial's complimentary checklist, call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. See if you've got it right. Take the checklist challenge today. Call or text LIST to 800-454-1184. Firm offers insurance services. Investment advisory services offered through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Hi, this is Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman, president of Heckman Financial. So today we've been discussing what to do with your finances after your spouse passes away. And Eric, because it's unlikely that you're both going to pass away at the same time, tell us how you help ensure that the spouse will have enough to live on.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's, I think, one of the most important things that, people, especially I think us guys, are really bad about. So we'll look at the income plan and, we'll sit down, we'll either on Zoom or, if it's in person here in the office, we'll go over the income plan. We'll be looking at that and saying, okay, hey, here's how the money's going and everything looks good. And then lots of times they kind of forget to look at the next tab, which is, okay, if one of you passes away, say it's, 10, 20 years, whatever it is, how does that affect the other one? Does the money still last as long? Does it run out? Because, there's a lot of things that happen, in terms of taxes and income and so forth. And sometimes that answer is not so great. And, obviously if you have real estate or something else like that as a backup, there may be ways to, borrow money out or withdraw money or downsize. But, again, it is one of those things where you want to look at it both ways, because especially around here, we got a lot of engineers. They have their spreadsheets, and I have yet to ever meet one that had a spreadsheet where it ran out the analysis if he died it's always the guys, by the way, who does the spreadsheets.
Usually.
Just so far in my sampling size, I haven't had any women do the spreadsheet thing with me, but well, there's a couple that actually track their money, but not to the detail some of these guys do. But yeah, I've never seen it with somebody, what happens to my spouse. It's always just the two of them.
Yes,
so
yes.
There's a little bit of blinders or whatever you want to call it on for, not like people don't know that, but they just don't, it's one of those things where you just don't want to plan or talk about it, right?
Yeah, you just don't go there, yeah. You mentioned earlier, that so many things do happen when a spouse dies. I want to talk about, how that income situation is going to change. You mentioned that. Tell us what happens with things like pensions and Social Securities, Eric.
Yeah, so pensions, you have this, if you're lucky enough to have one, then you've got this jargon that they have, this 100% joint survivor type jargon, or 150%, 100/50. So what those numbers mean is it's always 100% if the employee or whoever had the pension is around. But what happens if that primary person passes away and the secondary person gets it? And that's what that other number is. So just throw some numbers out there. Say if the person had a $4,000 pension and they did 100/50 for joint and survivor, payouts. What that means is, as long as that person's around, 4,000's coming in, but the second they'd pass away, the surviving spouse only gets 2,000. So that's obviously a big difference, in income. Now, if that other person passes away first, the other one still keeps getting the 4,000, so there's no effect there. But for most spouses, especially if you want to stay married, typically you'll do the 100% each. But sometimes people do what happens, the trade-off is if you're doing 100% each, you might only get 3,500, not 4,000. So, right, you're basically buying life insurance by having that lower income for the rest of your life. And especially if the other person passes away, well, then you messed up. You picked the wrong one, but you didn't know, right, ahead of time. So one solution is to have life insurance if you have a pension. If you know you're going to have a pension payout, start looking about life insurance probably when you're 50, 55. Don't look when you're 65 because it's a lot older and tougher to get, and you don't have the timeline there. So if you plan that out a little bit better, then maybe you can pick that full value just to you and have the life insurance come in and offset it. But like I said, also the other really tough one, which pretty much affects everybody, is Social Security. Social Security, you get the larger of the two checks. So say if one person's getting 3,000 and the other one's getting 2, if one person dies, doesn't matter who, the 3,000 stays and the 2,000 goes away.
Wow. But look how much you lost, Wow.
But again, that's a huge amount of lost money. Social Security is not state taxable in California, so that's a lot of tax-free money on the state side. And then, 15% of it's not taxable on the federal side. So it was also fairly tax-efficient money, so it's kind of almost bigger dollars because of that aspect. And so, now all of a sudden, you've got a lot more money that you need to come up with. And again, a lot of those expenses don't change. Mortgages don't change, property taxes don't change. A lot of your utilities barely change or don't change. You're going to still need a lot of this money. What does that mean? Bigger withdrawals from your other assets. And that means it's going to be a bigger burn rate. And again, that's where you want to make sure you have that plan in place. And, if you don't have that plan in place, well, good luck, right? I mean, how do you know if things are going to work or not? So just like NASA has all these backup and contingency plans, we all need that for our retirement too, right? You need that backup. You need to have something to say, okay, if this happens, we want to plan for the best. We will hope for the best, right? But you also still got to plan for the worst. If this happens, how's that going to change my life? And but life happens, and that does happen. So one of the things we have developed is this toolbox here that we have. So we've got a lot of resources up there. We've got a copy of my book. We've got a lot of educational materials that you can pick and select from and just download. So again, if that's something you want to grab, it's super easy. All you have to do is text the word toolbox, or you can even call and leave a message for toolbox. But text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184. Again, that's 800-454-1184. Or you can download it directly at wealthcreatorradio.com.
And again, this toolbox is complimentary. So this is just a way to honestly transform your worries of retirement into confidence. So something that we want you to get free of charge. Thanks so much for joining us. This is Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. So Eric, what if one of the spouses had a long-term care illness? Okay, so they spent, who knows, years or months and months in long-term care. It's so expensive. How does that make things change for that surviving spouse?
Yeah, so that is probably the biggest blinders that especially guys, and I think all of us have, is how much long-term care is affecting us all. When I started in the business in the early 90s, I'm pretty sure the stats were right around 50% of people needed some sort of long-term care, either at home or in a facility or something. Now, the last one I saw was 80%.
Wow.
And that's because if you think about it, stuff that used to kill you, now you take a pill for or something. So you're still able to be there, but the quality of life may not be quite as great, and then you need help, doing things. So those numbers are easily $8,000 to $12,000 a month now. This is not stuff that is covered by insurance at all. Medicare, the most they'll ever cover is 100 days, which is just a little over 3 months. It's if they cover that long. It can be somebody can spend a couple hundred, 300, 400, 500,000, and then the person passes away. And then the healthy spouse, the surviving spouse, not only do they have way less money, but they also now, like we mentioned before, have less income.
Yeah, the savings has been drained.
Yeah, so the savings have been drained down. Now they've got a lot less money sitting there, less income now if the person passes away. It can be a really, huge devastation for people. And so the traditional long-term care policies are pretty awful because where they used to all brag that none of them had raised their rates, all of them have raised their rates. There is nobody left who hasn't. And, some of them, like CalPERS, is for the public employees retirement, they're actually just canceling. They got sued for all the rate increases, and they're just going to cancel the plans and give everybody back their money and say, good luck. So there are other options if you plan ahead. There's some great things that are like there's some annuities where you can put in $50,000, and if you need long-term care, they'll give you $150,000. Or there's some life insurance policies that you can get that are, stable in terms of premium, but they'll keep they'll give you some of that death benefit to use for long-term care. So there's a lot of different things where these are ones where I like where if nothing bad happens to you, which is what you're shooting for, right? Then you're still good. But if something does happen, then it's going to make your dollars worth more dollars, and so it works either way. If you need it or you don't need it, it's still beneficial. So again, that's something you want to be taking care of. You want to be looking at. And again, that's some of the stuff that we do have up on our toolbox. So again, if you want to have that toolbox, you can download it, all the different resources. You get to pick and choose from, my book, everything up there. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184. Or you can link it straight from wealthcreatorradio.com.
Still more to come from Eric Heckman. This is Wealth Creator Radio. We'll be right back.
Things you can do in 15 minutes. Walk the dog. Make a smoothie. Meditate. Now you can add creating a personalized retirement plan to that list. Schedule your complimentary 15-minute call with Heckman Financial Services today. Text VISIT to 800-454-1184. Keyword. That's VISIT to 800-454-1184.
Hi, we're so glad to have you join us today. This is Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. He is a well-known speaker and author. He can provide you with some guidance to get you to and through retirement with worry less wealth. That is his goal for you. When you like to worry less, well, that's what this show is all about. Eric explains. Now, right now is a time, Eric, where I'm going to read some questions for you. Okay, we're going to dig into your Wealth Creator Radio mailbag, and then you're going to give us some answers. So these are from retirees. Are you ready for this?
Yep, let's go for it.
You're always ready. Okay. I'm planning on retiring in 3 or 4 years, and I'm thinking really hard about relocating. What are some things to consider as I'm trying to narrow down my options for where to move?
Well, probably the biggest one is, what are you going to do with your house? Are you going to sell it? You get the $500,000 if you're married, or $250,000 capital gain exclusion for single. Depending on how long you live there, for a lot of people in the Bay Area, they're way over that, so that you may have a pretty big taxable hit. So that's one thing to be thinking about. One benefit, if you're staying in California, the new Prop 19 allows you to move your property tax basis from way back when to any other place in the state, so that can make it nicer if you're trying to move to the foothills or something. Obviously, if you're going to move to a tax-free state like Texas, Nevada, Washington, something like that, then that does play into a lot of things about your financial plan, because you're deferring California tax, and then not having to pay it when you take it out. So that can be a big one. And then also, are you going to just rent the house? Are you going to rent where you're going to go to? Yeah, there's lots of different options. So I would say just kind of get some pros and cons. I mean, one of the interesting things, actually, my neighbor did this. When they sold their house, they booked 5 one-month Airbnbs in different parts of the country. And so they just wanted to figure out where they wanted to live. 2 of them were locations where their kids are living, their adult children. But some weren't. And so, yeah, they just wanted to kind of get a feel for it. And I think it's actually almost always a better option if you can to, do a short-term rental or do something for a while before you get to know that neighborhood, because you may think this one area, this one town you want to move to is good, but then once you live there a little bit, you find out the traffic's bad or other things. And so I think it's really good if you can to just, initially rent, just check it out, and then also try to spend some time in all seasons.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, especially if you're leaving the Bay Area where, we complain when it, the 1 or 2 days a year it hits freezing levels and stuff, and the rare days it hits 100. So, yeah, if you're going someplace where it's snowing and ice storms and, I've seen a lot of clients move to other places, and, yeah, they're dealing with a lot of weather.
We're digging into Eric's Wealth Creator Radio mailbag. And here's another one. I like how my money has been performing in the markets, but I am starting to get a little bit worried about the risk that I'm taking. Now, this is my life savings. So what are some moves I should make with my money, Eric?
Yeah, so that's one of the critical things is I think people way too much depend on the stock market to always be good. And we know there's .com crashes. We know there's 08 crashes, COVID crashes, right? All these things. And so, yeah, you cannot depend 100% on the stock markets. So you want to have some foundational money, some money that can't go away, some money that's guaranteed. You want to have some money that's guaranteed ideally for the rest of your lifetime. And you also want to have some steady income in addition to the market money. So yeah, that'd be one of the things I would definitely recommend is start looking at those 2 other areas. Again, that's something we help with all of our clients here do is diversify that money out and make sure that you've got a plan that works in all conditions, all market conditions, because that's the only plan that you want.
Right, exactly. And so take us through your blueprint to Worryless Wealth, which is what you're offering today.
Yeah, so the blueprint basically covers the 5 critical areas: having an income plan, a written income plan that takes into account taxes, inflation, everything. Investment plan, how are those dollars set up? Are they in foundational, steady income, market money? Look at the taxes. When should you convert? When should you not? When should you be put money into what account? When should you take money out of which account? Look at the healthcare issues along the way. If you're retiring pre-65, post-65, long-term care. And then even legacy, who's going to get your stuff at the end, what assets are better to leave behind, and all those types of things. So, that's one of the things that we've been doing here for a long time at Heckman Financial is creating that blueprint to Worryless Wealth. And, again, that's something we can create for you. There's no cost, no obligation. All you do is set up a 15 to 30-minute phone call. We'll talk about what's your situation, what concerns you have. And then from there, we can kind of build out that blueprint that you have already that you just don't know. And we'll tell you what's working and what areas you might have some issues in. And then we can figure out ways to address them. So, again, if you want to take advantage of that, all you have to do is set up that phone call. You can text the word VISIT to 800-454-1184. 1184. Again, text the word VISIT 800-454-1184. 800-454-1184, or book directly online at wealthcreatorradio.com.
Let Eric and his team at Heckman Financial help guide you to help you lay out your income for the rest of your life. You might be retired for 20, 30, maybe even 40 years, and he and his team are here to guide you. Here's another question, and this one has to do with Social Security, Eric. We're reaching into Eric's Wealth Creator Radio email bag, and here's one here. Could Social Security really keep up with the cost of living?
Supposedly the government says it will.
Yeah.
There was that huge increase for 2022 for inflation, but there's some years where there's been no increases and other ones where there have been in between. So, you can kind of count on anywhere from 1% to 3%, average increases, but Social Security is not that much money to start off with. I mean, for most people, that's not going to be a successful retirement if that's all you have. And so, it's going to help. It's definitely not a bad thing, right? But it is something that you can't rely on Social Security, because Social Security is not going to be enough to have any sort of meaningful retirement or existence, I guess I would call it. So, you definitely have to have other assets that are, outpacing that and keeping up with inflation.
That worries me about baby boomers. That's my generation, my peers. And, I know, several years ago, you and I were always talking about how people just haven't saved enough. What are you seeing mostly lately on people my age who are getting ready to retire?
Well, obviously, most of the clients that people come to me, they have done some savings,
Okay.
so they have some built up, and they're trying to figure out, some obviously have done very well, some not as well, and so it's like, okay, well, where do you want to, how do you want to change stuff? Do you want to retire here, or you want to relocate, or do you want to work a few more years? But that's the beauty of our income plan, is we can figure that out ahead of time, then make those decisions with some knowledge. It's a lot worse when you're retired, then you're trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to live?
Yeah.
And, oh, shoot, I should have not retired for another couple of years.
Right.
So,
yeah. There you go.
you don't want to have that. Yeah. So you want to plan that ahead for sure.
Make sure you have a plan for your income. Yeah. Okay. Here's probably the last question I can get in for today. We're reaching into Eric's Wealth Creator Radio mailbag. This one is asking, can you explain what a qualified charitable distribution is? I've read a little bit about it. I'm still not sure exactly what it is and what the benefits are.
So a qualified charitable distribution, QCD. So this is basically for people who have that required minimum distribution. So, if you're hitting 72, the goofy thing about this law is when they changed it to 72, they did allow you to still donate your money at 70 and a half. I don't know who's going to do that really, because you don't have to take the money out. So why would you donate it unless you're being overly generous? But, the reality for most people when they're retired is most people can't itemize anymore. With a lot of the eliminations of the deductions and the, getting rid of the exemptions, but having the higher standard deduction, lots of times people are, when they're retired, they either have a small mortgage or no mortgage, so they can't have that mortgage write-off and other things. So they can't usually get a write-off for charitable donations. So what this does is this says, okay, well, yeah, you got to take out, there's so much money from your, your what we call your required minimum distribution, or RMD, from your retirement accounts. If you want, you can have that sent straight from whoever handles your IRA. So say if it's, Fidelity, for example, go from Fidelity straight to that charity. You don't pay tax on it, but it meets the definition of you taking the money out.
Awesome.
And the cool thing is it kind of barely shows up on your tax return. It shows up there for a second, but comes right off. So it's not income. It's not a write-off, but it's just not income. So say you had to take out $10,000 and instead you donated that. That's not $10,000 of income. That's not, stuff that you have to have a deduction for or anything else like that. You just don't pay the tax. So it's a great way to go. Again, that's one of those things where if you've got a plan, you work in that part of your plan, then it's easy to figure out how to donate that and when to do that. There's also things called donor advised funds that we use for people who have highly appreciated stock. That's a great way to compile all your donations in 1 year. So there's a lot of different ways that you can really get some great tax benefits if you do some planning with not only a financial advisor who knows the financial markets type of stuff and investment products, but really also knows the taxes. So, again, that's something we do here at Heckman Financial. So if you want to sit down with us and set up that blueprint to Worry Less Wealth, where we talk about that, income plan, investments, taxes, healthcare, legacy, all you have to do is text us the word visit to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word visit, 800-454-1184, or book directly online at wealthcreatorradio.com.
You're listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman of Heckman Financial. We'll be right back with the rest of our show.
Become a wealth creator today. Text VISIT to 800-454-1184 to schedule your 15-minute call with Eric and his team. That's VISIT to 800-454-1184.
You're listening to Wealth Creator Radio with Eric Heckman. I'm Lou Ann Fulmer. So happy to have you along with us today. On our show, Eric and I often discuss challenges that retirees have or risks that exist in retirement. So we're going to have Eric give us an example right now of someone who has experienced one of those retirement obstacles. So, all right, I know you have an idea in your head, kind of a story. So why don't you tell us about a financial fail, Eric?
Well, this one's kind of a little bit more of a combination of fails, but realizing how you're supposed to invest. It's kind of like people going to the gym and for a week and wondering why they haven't lost weight or why they're not super buffed all of a sudden, right? I mean, it's just, it's silly. But that's what people are doing with investing is I've seen a lot of people where they put money in and then they say, oh, this thing went down, so I'm going to bail out of it right now. Well, there's some times where you actually do have to, ride those ups and downs. It's, you don't get off the roller coaster midway. You stay buckled in until you get back to where the start was, right? And, same with investing. You're supposed to stay in it. And so what I've seen a lot of people, unfortunately, doing is that they either just didn't have enough cash, they didn't have enough money in the bank, they didn't have enough other steady income coming in, or they just didn't have some guaranteed sources that they can go grab in these downturns. And so, a lot of them have been just raiding the money, of their investments. And what do human nature sell? Well, human nature says you sell the thing that dropped the least. So, like I use a few different steady income funds, and a lot of these funds, they've been maxing out on their withdrawals because they only redeem 5% of the shares every quarter. And why is that? Because they didn't drop. So people are taking money out of stuff that's doing well, that's paying good income, because they don't want to sell the stock that went down 30 or 40%. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest problem I've been seeing a lot for the last couple of years here is really people not having that diversity. I mean, for the last 30 years, this has been my life's work of helping people make that shift to retirement. And wow, I mean, you gotta be able to have some money that's guaranteed, that's earning some good income that you can grab in those bad years, because they're always gonna happen. Every set of decades is a couple bad years and a lot of good years, and you gotta be prepared for those. So yeah, if you don't have those kind of preparations, you need to get some more education. You need to find out a little bit more info from us. We can give you a copy of my book, Worry Less Wealth. We can give you ways to make your money last, see if you're paying too much in taxes, Social Security decision. There's a lot of great tools in our digital toolbox. All you have to do is text the word toolbox to 800-454-1184. Again, text the word toolbox, 800-454-1184, or go online directly and download it at wealthcreatorradio.com. That's all for this week's show. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Information provided during Wealth Creator Radio is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. Eric Heckman offers investment advisory services through Heckman Financial and Insurance Services, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Any tax advice given as part of this presentation is not intended to be used and cannot be used by the taxpayer for the purpose of avoiding tax penalties or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any matter or transaction addressed herein. The views and opinions expressed in the program are not necessarily those of the radio station or its sponsors, and they should not construe as legal, tax, or investment advice. You should always consult the appropriate advisor before making any financial decision.